If you've ever wanted to fall asleep to the sound of mild political instability and casual decapitations, you're in the right place. Tonight's episode: why you would not last a day in a French Revolution mob. Because while it might sound thrilling to storm the Bastille or scream liberté with strangers in a wine-fueled crowd, the reality is that you'd probably lose a shoe, mispronounce Robespierre, and get mistaken for a spy before breakfast. But before we descend into bread riots, paranoia, and public executions, take a moment to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and most importantly, leave a comment telling me where and when in the world you're tuning in from. Is it midnight in Manitoba? 2 a.m. in Tokyo? I'd love to know where you're quietly giving up on sleep tonight. Now, settle in. Let the dull comfort of civic collapse carry you off to dreamland. We begin, as most revolutionary mornings do, with hunger, body odor, and a distant chant you don't quite understand, but follow anyway. Let's begin. You awaken in what could charitably be called a shared space. It is technically a room. It contains a bed-shaped object, 2 buckets, and a slanted beam that has given more concussions than comfort. You are lying on a sack of straw that pokes you in several morally questionable places. The year is 1793. The French Revolution is very much underway. And you, dear sleeper, are a small and perpetually confused resident of a world where political power shifts faster than your access to clean socks. You sit up slowly, wince, and then immediately bang your head against the ceiling beam. This happens every morning. The beam is low, vindictive, and slightly moldy. You've named it Louis XVI. The symbolism is satisfying. Around you, the room exhales in a symphony of snores, coughs, and the rustling of bodies entangled in communal sleep. You are sharing this space with your older brother Etienne, who once dreamed of becoming a scholar but now mostly dreams of turnips. He is curled under a ragged wool blanket, clutching a spoon like a weapon. It is unclear whether he sleeps with it for protection or emotional comfort. Your widowed aunt, Helene, lies beside him on a broken chaise lounge, knitting in her sleep. She hasn't made anything useful in weeks, but she claims the act of knitting soothes her revolutionary nerves. You suspect it's just an excuse to stab something 50 times per minute. Next to the stove, if you can call a pile of bricks and a dented pan a stove, is your neighbor Maurice, the man who came for dinner 3 weeks ago and never left. No one has asked him why he's still here. He mutters in his sleep about corn futures and something called sauce. No one knows what he means. And in the corner, Gerard the goat. He arrived 6 months ago as a barter for a pot of stew. You kept the goat. You never got the stew. Gerard stares at you while chewing something that was never intended to be food. You suspect he is smarter than most of the people in the room. You stretch carefully this time and try to shake the soreness out of your shoulders. You slept in a shape not recognized by modern ergonomics, and your body has responded by mutinying in small, passive-aggressive ways. Your lower back has a pulse of its own now. The air in the room is rich. It's a fragrant blend of cooked cabbage, wet wool, unbrushed teeth, and disappointment. Somewhere underneath it all, you detect the faint aroma of feet, possibly yours. You glance down at your clothing. You're wearing a shirt that has surrendered to time. It was once white. Now it's a kind of desperate beige. It has holes where buttons used to be, and buttons where hope used to live. You tie it together with a bit of twine, securing your modesty with a knot that can barely hold your dignity together. Your breeches are 2 generations old, inherited from an uncle who met an unfortunate end involving a bakery window and a very territorial raccoon. They are patched, threadbare, and smell faintly of regret. You put them on anyway. It's not like anyone has noticed your fashion choices since the king was still employed. Your shoes are wooden, as required by revolutionary fashion law. The cobbler who made them specialized in orthopedically hostile designs. They are heavy, loud, and shaped like blocks with ambition. Every step in them feels like a punishment from God, but they keep your feet out of the mud and only occasionally cause bleeding, so you keep wearing them. You look at your hands, calloused, dirty, resigned. These are not the hands of a poet. These are the hands of a man who has peeled one too many mystery vegetables. Your face, you assume, looks the same as always, tired, skeptical, and 30% forehead. You have not seen a mirror since 1791, and frankly, you're not interested in what it would say to you now. You walk toward the window, which is actually a square cutout in the wall, poorly covered by a tattered piece of fabric that once claimed to be a curtain. It flaps in the breeze like a surrender flag tied by someone who still doesn't want to give up. You pull it aside. Paris greets you. Outside, the sky is a grey smear. The buildings across the street lean slightly, as if they're listening in on your conversation. The stones of the road are wet with something you choose not to identify. A group of dogs is fighting over what might have been food in a past life. But beyond all that, there's a sound. Faint at first, like wind or bees, but it grows. A low murmur, voices, footsteps. The scuffle of many people who woke up just like you, hungry, irritated, and in the mood for righteous yelling. You hear someone shout, "Pain!" That's French for bread. Although, appropriately, it also sounds exactly like pain. You sigh. The mob is waking up early today. You had planned to try boiling potatoes, maybe clean your shirt with a bit of ash water, but it seems the revolution has other ideas for you this morning. You pull your head back in, tie your twine belt one notch tighter, and grab your satchel. It contains nothing. It's mostly for appearances. Etienne rolls over and mumbles, "They're marching again." You nod. "Must be Tuesday." He grunts and rolls over. Gerard bleats. You step over a sleeping Maurice and make your way toward the door. Another day. Another revolution. Bread. It is the foundation of your food pyramid, which, in revolutionary Paris, is less of a pyramid and more of a slightly damp rock with one item carved into it. Pain. Not pain as in suffering, though that, too, but pain as in bread, the staff of life, the pillar of the peasantry, the crusty manifestation of God's indifference to your hunger. You reach into your coat pocket. You remove 2 coins. They clink together with the unmistakable sound of insufficiency. You hold them up to the light like a disappointed priest examining a miracle that didn't quite happen. 2 sous. Just enough to insult a baker, not enough to buy from one. You consider your options. You could go to the market and haggle with someone selling turnip tops and lies. Chase rumors about cheap flour like a hungry dog chasing mist. Stare at your coins until they transform into a loaf of bread through sheer desperation. You choose none of these. Instead, you nibble the remaining half of yesterday's turnip and chew it for 45 seconds longer than necessary. It tastes like compromise. And dirt, but mostly compromise. You step out into the street. The Rue des Petites Écuries is already bustling, but not in the pleasant marketplace on a Saturday kind of way. No, this is the aggressive, barely restrained kind of bustling. The kind that ends in someone throwing a chicken at a policeman. A man in a red vest is shouting at a vendor. The vendor is not shouting back. She is sitting calmly behind a table stacked with jars of air and possibly one radish. She is winning the argument by doing absolutely nothing. You spot Madame Lefebvre, the widow who lives 2 doors down and smells permanently of vinegar. She is clutching her bonnet like a battle flag and screaming at a bakery door. The bakery is closed. The shutters are down. No one is inside. The baker has vanished. Again, you've seen this before. First, they run out of flour. Then they take a vacation. Then someone burns down their shop out of hunger and principle. It's a very short vacation. You consider intervening, maybe telling Madame Lefebvre to calm down. But last week she bit a man who tried that. You're not in the mood for tetanus. Instead, you continue walking. Your shoes clunk against the cobblestones like hollowed-out gilt. People glance at you as you pass, eyeing your satchel. Some with envy, some with suspicion. A few with the vacant look of someone considering whether you might be bread in disguise. A child runs past you. He's barefoot, laughing, carrying what looks like a potato that may or may not be carved into the shape of Marie Antoinette's head. You are not sure whether this is art or protest. In Paris, the line between those two is blurry. You follow your nose. It twitches slightly. There is something warm in the air. Yeast, fire, hope. You turn a corner and see a queue. Ah yes, the sacred French tradition of standing in a long line for the chance to be disappointed together. There's a whisper moving through the crowd. A baker 2 streets over has fresh loaves. He received flour from a cousin in Normandy. They say he bribed an official. They say his bread is made with sawdust. They say it doesn't matter. You join the line, not because you believe in it, but because you have nothing better to do than stand still with strangers and engage in collective pessimism. The woman in front of you is holding a bag of pebbles. She plans to trade them for a roll. The man behind you has nothing but stories and a small jar labeled future soup. No one asks what's in it. The line does not move. You wait. You reflect. You wonder what it would feel like to bite into something that wasn't fermented sadness. You begin to drift off standing up and only snap awake when someone in the front starts shouting, "They're out! They're out!" Groans ripple through the queue like an emotional tsunami. Someone throws a boot. Someone else throws up. A man attempts to start a chant, "Down with the Dolords," but he is quickly hushed for being too early in the morning for satire. You abandon the queue. You had invested 20 minutes and received nothing but disappointment, sore knees, and the faint suspicion that the bread never existed at all. You pass another poster. It's smeared with something that might be jam, or possibly revolutionary blood. It reads, "Liberté, égalité, fraternité, but bring your own baguette." You chuckle once, dryly, then stop. Too much humor can draw suspicion. Someone might think you're comfortable, or worse, content. You glance around for a bakery with a line under 20 people. There are none. You glance around for a bakery with a roof still intact. There are also none. You walk down a quieter street. You pass 3 shops that used to be bakeries, now repurposed as something called Committees of Wheat Regulation. You do not know what they do. You do know they never hand out bread. You stop near a corner and stare at a pigeon for a suspiciously long time. It stares back. You briefly wonder whether pigeon stew is socially acceptable in revolutionary France. You decide not to find out. A man with a powdered wig stumbles out of a side alley. He is panting, eyes wide. He shouts, "The Queen hoards the flour," then collapses dramatically into a puddle. No one helps him. A woman behind you mutters, "She bathes in milk and bakes cakes with our tears." Another nods solemnly. You have heard 5 versions of this rumor in the past week. All of them equally absurd, all of them equally believed. And still, No bread. You look down at your shoes, splattered with something unidentifiable, and you whisper to yourself, tomorrow, for sure. Tomorrow you will find bread. Tomorrow you will eat. Tomorrow you will survive. You will tell yourself this every day, until it becomes as stale as the loaf you never got. You are still chewing the memory of turnip when you hear it, the first scream of the morning. It begins as a low grumble, like a rusty gate giving up on life, then rises into a high, righteous crescendo. It is Claude. Claude lives across the street. He is your neighbor, your unofficial town crier, and your least favorite alarm clock. He has not worn shoes since August. He claims it is a political statement. Others suspect it's just laziness with flair. Claude is standing on a barrel. The barrel is wobbling. Claude is also wobbling. He holds a stick in one hand and a slightly squashed apple in the other. This is his usual revolutionary ensemble. He once tried to lead a protest wearing only bread and regret. That protest lasted 12 minutes. You watch as Claude waves his stick like a very angry conductor. His apple falls and bounces into a gutter. He does not notice. They are hiding it, he bellows. The flour, the salt, the jam. There is an audible gasp from a woman in the crowd. Jam, now that's serious. Claude points at nothing in particular and shouts, Versailles is stuffed like a pig's belly with grain, and we, the people, are fed nothing but lies and parsnips. You hear someone mutter, I like parsnips. Claude hears this too. He glares. You like parsnips, he snarls. Next you'll say you enjoy taxes. A nervous silence falls. No one speaks. No one makes eye contact. Not even the pigeons. Claude continues, undeterred. They feast while we starve. They polish their wigs while we boil roots. My mother boiled a sock last week. A sock. This is true. You were there. It was her nicest sock, too. Claude begins a chant. Down with the hoarders, down with the traitors, down with down things. The crowd hesitates, then joins in, sort of. Down with some stuff, someone shouts helpfully. Especially the expensive stuff, yells another. A man holding a spoon begins shaking it in solidarity. You, caught between genuine concern and second-hand embarrassment, give a single, uncertain fist pump, just enough to seem involved, not enough to commit to revolution before breakfast. Claude points at a child who is gnawing on a raw beet. This, he yells, this is what they've reduced us to, tiny beet children. The child stops chewing and stares at him, then slowly resumes chewing. You respect the child's focus. Claude's voice cracks from overuse and emotional instability. He attempts to step down from the barrel, but forgets he is standing on one. He falls. The barrel rolls. Claude spins like a dying carousel and lands in a cabbage cart. The cart's owner looks mildly annoyed. Typical Claude, she mutters, kicking him once for good measure. He groans. I meant to do that. No one believes him. You attempt to walk away, but Claude, never one to miss a captive audience, sits up dramatically from the cabbage pile and jabs his stick in your direction. You, he shouts. You freeze. You make the universal face of someone who does not wish to be included. Claude doesn't care. You live in that third-floor rat box, don't you? You nod slowly. Then you know about the noises of conspiracy. You blink. Claude continues. I heard footsteps last night. Soft ones, sneaky ones, aristocratic ones. You try to explain that your upstairs neighbor just got a new chamber pot and walks strangely. Claude shakes his head. A likely story. That's what they want you to think. You ask who they are. Claude gestures vaguely at the sky. Them, the ones who make decisions, the ones who have flour. Someone in the crowd shouts, "Are we talking about the clergy or the bakers?" Claude yells back, "Yes." At this point, a small crowd has formed. Most of them are people who have nothing better to do. A few are enthusiastic. Most are just waiting to see if Claude falls off anything else. A woman named Brigitte steps forward. She runs the local laundry. She's wearing a sash that says, "Down with something," though no one's sure what. Brigitte shouts, "I say we march to the Hotel de Ville." Claude agrees. Someone else shouts, "No, to the baker's shop." Claude agrees with that too. Or maybe the mayor's house. Definitely. A third voice pipes up, "What about the grain warehouse by the river?" Claude nods so hard he nearly falls again. You raise your hand cautiously. "Shouldn't we pick one?" Claude blinks. "Why? They're all guilty." The crowd murmurs in confused agreement. This is how mobs work. No direction, just collective indignation in motion. A man near the back says, "We should vote." Claude shrieks, "Voting is for committees." He receives scattered applause. Someone begins banging a pot with a ladle. The march begins. You watch as the crowd surges forward, unsure where it's going, but very sure it needs to go somewhere loudly. Claude is carried by the momentum, both figuratively and physically. He is now waving a cabbage leaf like a banner. The barrel he fell from is somehow rolling beside him. You think it may be haunted. Brigitte yells, "For bread." Claude yells, "For justice." A boy yells, "For jam." You sigh. You weren't planning on joining a mob today. You had other goals, modest ones. Maybe find an onion, patch your shirt, avoid Claude. But the streets are full, the air is warm with possibility, and, if you're being honest, you're a little bored. So you follow. Not because you believe in Claude, but because he is currently blocking the road, and you really need to get to the square. At some point, though, you're not sure exactly when you stop being a bystander and start being a participant. That's how it works in revolutionary Paris. You don't join the mob absorbs you. Like bread soaking up weak soup. You didn't plan this. You never do. 1 minute, you're avoiding Claude. The next, you're marching next to a man shouting about the tyranny of spoons. You don't know his name. You don't ask. He doesn't seem like someone with answers. The crowd moves forward with purpose. Muddled, contradictory purpose, but purpose nonetheless. One group wants to storm the baker's shop, another wants to petition the mayor. A third is looking for a missing chicken. No one can agree, but everyone agrees loudly. You clutch your satchel tightly. It is still empty, but you carry it as if it contains documents of great importance. This is a common strategy. Appear useful, appear purposeful. People are less likely to accuse you of treason if they think you're on an errand for someone angrier than they are. Next to you is a woman carrying a broom. She holds it like a weapon. You don't ask why. This is not the time for questions. Behind you, someone is playing a drum. Badly. You suspect it's a saucepan and a spoon, but the rhythm is infectious. March, march, pause, shout, march. A man with a swollen eye and a deep love for slogans begins shouting, "Bread for all." Another follows, "Down with the doughlords." Someone yells, "No more crust taxes." That one doesn't make sense, but no one corrects him. You look around. Everyone seems to be improvising. Fashion, ideology, personal hygiene, it's all fluid in the mob. Some people wear red sashes, others blue cockades. One man is shirtless and covered in charcoal. He claims it's camouflage. You don't ask for what. Claude is ahead, waving a wooden spoon like a general directing troops made entirely of discontent and leg cramps. He's shouting words in no particular order. Justice, baguette, traitors, jam. You wonder if he's okay. You decide it's best not to wonder too hard. The street narrows, the march slows. You take this moment to assess your position. You are now between a group of seamstresses who chant in eerie unison and a man selling garlic from a wheelbarrow. He doesn't seem to be protesting. He's just here for the foot traffic. A boy hands you a small flag. It's red, white, and blue, stitched unevenly. You accept it. He smiles, then runs off shouting something about liberty and goats. You wave the flag once, unconvincingly. It makes you feel like a very tired patriot. Someone pats you on the back. You turn. It's Brigitte, the laundress from earlier. Her sash now reads, "We are hungry and also tired." She nods at you. You nod back. This is how alliances are formed. The mob turns left. You do not know where you're going, but you are going there emphatically. Someone near the front screams, "To the Hotel de Ville." Someone else screams, "No, to the flour warehouse." Claude screams, "To destiny." A small dog barks once, then gives up. You find yourself walking past buildings you've seen 1,000 times, but now they look different. The butcher shop with the broken sign, the tailor's with one window still intact, the boarded-up bakery with the word traitor smeared across the door in what you hope is jam. Every familiar thing becomes strange when surrounded by a crowd. You pass a man with a bucket on his head. He is shouting, "I am the voice of the people." The people do not respond. You pass a woman standing on a crate, reading from a pamphlet. Her voice is strong, passionate, unintelligible. The crowd nods. They like the tone. No one knows what she said. Someone hands you a potato. It is warm. You thank them, out of instinct, then realize you're not sure what to do with it. You put it in your satchel. You now possess a potato. You are rising in the ranks. The mob picks up speed. Claude yells, "Faster, my friends, the tyrants don't wait." No one knows which tyrants he's referring to. But he has a stick and a loud voice, so people obey. You nearly trip on a cobblestone. A woman grabs your arm and steadies you. She does not smile. She just nods, like this was a transactional act of solidarity. You nod back. You feel slightly braver. You hear someone reading a list of grievances. They are written on a bedsheet. The list includes bread prices, lack of salt, the suspicious disappearance of cats, unfair hat taxes, that one guy who keeps dancing near the well. The crowd claps. This is the revolution. Equal parts politics and folklore. You glance up and realize you are now marching under a banner that says, "The third time is the revolutionary charm." You did not choose this banner, it simply found you. At one point, the mob stops. There is shouting up ahead. You crane your neck. Someone is arguing with a city guard. He is young, terrified, and sweating profusely. He tells the crowd to disperse. They respond by singing a poorly harmonized revolutionary song. It is both beautiful and slightly off-key. You do not sing. You hum. The guard panics and runs. Cheers erupt. You are now part of a victorious movement. You did nothing, but you wave your small flag anyway. Claude climbs onto a box and declares, "The people have spoken." Someone yells, "We haven't said anything yet." Claude ignores them. Then, silence. Just for a moment. A breath. A pause between collective indignation and the next surge. You realize, as you stand there in the midst of this jumbled army of hunger and fury and slightly off-topic grievances, that you're not really part of it, not in the way Claude is, or Brigitte, or the man dressed as a revolutionary turnip. You are a participant in the most passive sense. You're here because you live here, because the bakery was closed, because your goat is sleeping, because you had nothing better to do. You are not a revolutionary. You are a tired, slightly hungry, reasonably clean by local standards, mildly skeptical Parisian. And you have been swept up in something much larger than yourself, something loud, chaotic, and weirdly patriotic. You take a deep breath, and you keep marching. Because even if you don't know where this is going, it's not like you were going anywhere else. Paris does not have wide streets. It has veins. Narrow, winding, overcrowded veins filled with people, carts, animals, smells, and revolutionary enthusiasm in various stages of fermentation. As the morning grows older and the crowd less coherent, the streets begin to fill, not just with bodies but with sound, with presence, with energy. The kind of energy that says, we're definitely going somewhere, and also, we absolutely do not know where. You are now 3 steps behind Claude, 5 steps ahead of a man trying to sell pamphlets no one wants, and elbow to elbow with a girl beating a ladle against a dented pot. Her rhythm is surprisingly catchy. She might have a future in percussion, assuming the Republic survives another week. The mob has grown. Dozens have become hundreds. Hundreds feel like thousands, mostly because revolutionary math is emotionally driven and extremely imprecise. People keep joining, from windows, from side alleys, from shop fronts with cracked shutters and anxious cats. A man in a faded military coat steps into line beside you. He smells of onions and misplaced nostalgia. He tells you he fought in Corsica and has a cousin who once shook Robespierre's hand. You don't know whether to be impressed or worried. You nod solemnly and pretend to believe him. This is what polite mob etiquette demands. You pass a fountain. Someone climbs it and tries to give a speech. It begins well-rousing tone, mention of liberty, vague hand gestures. But then he forgets what he was saying, gets into an argument with himself about taxes, and is pelted with stale pastries, a swift trial by tart. The mob does not pause. It flows around him like water around a stone, or perhaps like gravy around a slightly disappointing meatloaf. You feel the shift. It's subtle, but it's there. This is no longer a gathering of neighbors and disgruntled shoppers. This is a force, disorganized, underfed, confused about its own slogans, but a force nonetheless. People have begun chanting in waves, not in unison, mind you, that would require leadership and coordination, but in overlapping bursts, like revolutionary echoes. You hear, pain, pain, justice, pain, à bas les riches. To the flower stores. Did someone say jam? Each chant cuts through the next like blades of grass in a political windstorm. They don't cancel each other out. They just layer over one another until the message is less, we demand change, and more, we're extremely loud and tired of waiting. You pass a street vendor selling hats. Yesh hats. Not bread, not pamphlets, hats, tricolor bonnets, liberty caps, and a few suspiciously dusty wigs. He yells, "Revolutionize your wardrobe," with the confidence of a man who understands neither fashion nor revolution. People buy his hats anyway, not because they want them, but because the act of buying feels like participating. You buy one. It's too small. It makes your ears look enormous. You wear it anyway. This is what democracy looks like. The march halts. No one knows why. Word spreads like spilled wine. There's a blockage ahead. A horse cart tipped over, possibly sabotaged. Possibly just terrible wheel maintenance. No one can confirm. While the front tries to resolve this mystery, the back of the mob begins to dance. Yes, dance. Someone has a fiddle. Someone else starts clapping. Claude does a series of uncoordinated lunges that he calls liberty squats. A child spins in place, yells, "Death to flower taxes," and falls over laughing. You sway gently. It's hard to stay angry while dancing, but it's also hard to maintain a mob's momentum while standing still. The crowd is torn between celebration and indignation. They settle on confused shuffling. You overhear two elderly women discussing strategy. Do we march left after this? No, right, toward the fish market. But the baker's cousin lives the other way. Ah, so we march nowhere. Perfect. They laugh. You think they might be the sanest people here. As the cart is cleared, a new chant erupts. À la mairie, à la mairie. To City Hall. This is met with general approval, a few scattered cheers, and one man who insists they were already supposed to be going there. The crowd tells him to hush. No one likes being reminded they're lost. You continue marching. A street urchin tosses rose petals into the air. No one knows why. Someone tries to eat one. The streets tighten again. Now you're walking shoulder to shoulder, rib to rib, breath to breath. It's a strange intimacy, being packed this tightly with people who share your rage, your hunger, and your total lack of a plan. You catch snippets of conversations. They say Marat is still alive, but underground. I heard Danton is secretly a pastry chef. I think I accidentally joined a singing club. A man leans out of a second-story window, holding a goose. He yells, "What are you lot doing?" Someone shouts back, "Revolution!" The goose honks. A moment of silence follows. Everyone respects the goose. The heat rises. The air thickens, not with temperature, but with emotion. It's the heat of thousands of feet, of breath against breath, of fevered speculation that someone important might be watching this from a shuttered window. You march onward. You're no longer sure what you're marching for, but you are committed. You've come this far. You're wearing a too small hat. You have a flag, a satchel with a potato, and enough revolutionary jargon to pass as invested. The bakeries are closed. The government is distant. The street is full. And so you keep walking. With the crowd. Toward justice. Toward lunch. Toward whatever comes next. There is a certain moment in any good mob where something changes. It's not a dramatic shift. No thunderclap. No divine vision. No sudden scream of realization. Just a subtle twitch in the atmosphere. The kind of moment where you stop thinking about what you're doing and start letting the crowd do the thinking for you. It is, in short, the precise moment your brain goes on strike and your feet keep marching. You feel it now. As you shuffle past a dented statue of Henri IV, someone's tied a tricolor ribbon around its nose. You realize you are no longer an individual. You are now a node in a much louder organism. A living, breathing, shouting mass of limbs and hopes and half-formed political ideologies. You are, officially, a part of the mob. And here's the thing about mobs. They do not require logic. They do not require information. They do not even require a coherent cause. They require only two ingredients: a shared sense of vague injustice, a willingness to walk in the same direction while yelling. You begin to notice things. The man beside you is holding a sign that says, "Let them eat dust." You do not know what this means, neither does he, but it rhymes, and that's enough. The woman behind you chants, "No more soup lies," over and over. You wonder briefly if there was a specific incident, or if soup is now symbolic of broader economic betrayal. A cobbler near the front has started yelling in Latin. You suspect he's just making it up. It sounds important though, and several others have begun copying him phonetically. You too shout nonsense. It feels good, revolutionary, cathartic, therapeutic, in a very aggressive way. Mob psychology, you begin to realize, is governed by rules, very simple ones, not written down anywhere, but universally obeyed. Rule 1. The loudest person wins. It does not matter what they say. If they shout it with enough conviction, the crowd will echo it. This explains Claude, who is now yelling, "Down with bread aristocracy," while wearing a hat made from a cooking pot. Rule 2. Objects gain power through waving. Signs, flags, loaves of stale bread. If it's above your head and moving rhythmically, it suddenly means something. What exactly is unclear, but meaning is not the point. Motion is the point. Rule 3. Suspicion is contagious. A whisper spreads like plague. He's too clean. She's too quiet. That baby looks royalist. It doesn't have to be true. It just has to be said once, loudly. You suddenly become self-conscious. You check your shoes. Too muddy, good. You frown deeply, also good. You shout, "Tyrants," at nothing in particular, just to be safe. You pass a bakery that's been closed for weeks. Its windows are covered in scratchy, revolutionary graffiti. Some of it says, "Bread for blood." One says, "Justice for yeast." You wonder if that one was meant to be ironic. You decide it's best not to ask. Someone in the crowd begins explaining Rousseau. Loudly, incorrectly, no one stops him. He misquotes the social contract, but follows it up with, "and also no more powdered wigs." Everyone cheers. The wig thing gets the real reaction. The Rousseau part is mostly ignored. You begin to feel the weight of collective emotion. You didn't wake up intending to feel this strongly about flour, but now you do. You didn't care much about grain tariffs, but now they enrage you. You didn't have an opinion on municipal tax overreach, but now you're against it, loudly, possibly while holding a fish. It is not that you have been convinced. It is that conviction has been handed to you like a hat. You put it on, and it fits. A man in a red cloak climbs onto a crate and delivers a speech. You cannot hear the words, only the cadence. It rises and falls like a sermon from someone who has read half a political pamphlet and filled in the rest with theater. He ends by shouting, "Liberty lives in our shoes." You do not understand. You shout, "Yes," anyway. Claude throws his pot hat into the air. It hits someone. They cheer. At the edge of the crowd, a woman is selling miniature guillotines made from wood scraps. She calls them freedom slicers. They're only decorative, or at least, you hope they are. You see a boy slicing carrots with one. The crowd laughs. You are unsure whether this is endearing or deeply unsettling. You move on. You pass a sign tacked to a door. It reads, "Anyone not yelling is a potential monarchist." You cough loudly. You raise your fist. You make vague, grunting noises of disapproval just in case someone is watching. You are not taking chances. You start to lose track of time. Marching has become your new form of thought. The rhythm of feet on stone. The chant that no longer means anything. The scent of human commitment and cabbages. There is a comfort in this mindlessness. You feel held, not by people, but by momentum. It's like falling asleep on your feet, except instead of dreaming, you're shouting things you don't understand at buildings you've never entered. You are not tired. You are not awake. You are in it. Someone stumbles. The crowd catches them. Someone faints. The crowd steps around them respectfully. Someone throws a turnip at a guard tower. The crowd roars. You wonder what happens if you stop, if you step aside, if you say, "Actually, I think I'd like to go home and make soup." You suspect you'd be accused of sabotage, or worse, moderation. So you keep going, not because you know what this mob is doing, but because you'd rather not be the only one who doesn't. There is a myth crafted in textbooks, polished in political speeches, and repeated by people who enjoy stirring beverages while frowning thoughtfully that the French Revolution was led by philosophers. It was not. It was led by sock vendors, and fishwives, and washerwomen, and failed playwrights, and cobblers who never quite got the heel-to-toe ratio right, and that one guy who sells buttons but insists he's a political theorist. The revolution belongs, quite stubbornly, to people with calluses. You're now standing among them, and they are extremely upset about socks. It starts with a woman shouting near a fountain. She's got one shoe, two teeth, and an extraordinary capacity for projecting her voice across entire arrondissements. "Down with thread taxes," she screams. You blink. You weren't aware thread had a tax. You weren't aware thread had politics. But the crowd is into it. Heads are nodding. Someone throws a thimble into the air and yells, "Long live buttons." You are officially witnessing the birth of a cause. A man with a suspicious beard yells, "We make the socks that warm the feet that march for liberty." The crowd roars. You stand still, unsure whether to cheer. You are not wearing socks. You were not issued any. You suspect this may make you a counter-revolutionary. You clap just in case. Nearby, a group of women from the laundry district begin chanting, "No more holes," repeatedly. You are unsure if this is literal or metaphorical. It probably doesn't matter. Revolutionary messaging, you're learning, is more about enthusiasm than clarity. One woman waves a clothesline like a flag. A child dangles from it. No one blinks. You drift toward a table set up by the Union des Marchands de Bar, or the United Sock Sellers. It is not an official union. It is 3 women, a crate, and a sign that reads, "République de la Corsette," the Republic of Socks. You approach the crate. It contains exactly 4 socks. None match. All have holes. One appears to be moving. The woman behind the crate eyes you with suspicion. "Are you a customer?" she asks, "or an exploiter?" You say, "Customer," quickly. She nods once and lets you continue breathing. Another vendor sets up beside her. He is selling scarves. His sign says, "No necks without warmth." You think about correcting his grammar. Then remember what happened to the last man who questioned a slogan. He is no longer visible in public spaces. You buy a scarf. You do not need a scarf, but it helps you blend in. You are now loosely aligned with the textile resistance. Congratulations. Around you, the sock discourse intensifies. A man begins a dramatic monologue about how his mother died without ever owning a pair of warm stockings. He weeps mid-sentence, then takes a sip from a bottle labeled simply, "Wine, maybe." The crowd applauds. A woman tosses a hat into the air. It lands in a puddle. She retrieves it with dignity. Claude appears again. Of course he does. He now wears a vest made entirely of oven mitts and appears to have a sock tied around his forehead like a war bandana. He yells, "Down with the monarchy of toes." The mob doesn't question it. A revolutionary with a cart full of mismatched gloves screams, "Socks are only the beginning." You think about that statement. You do not like where it could lead. Further down the street, A group of young radicals aged 8 to 10 have set up a tiny guillotine made from sticks, string, and alarming dedication. They behead a worn-out sock. The crowd cheers. The woman next to you cries. "It had so much stretch left in it," she sobs. You offer her your new scarf. She declines. "I don't accept sympathy from neckwear," she says, and walks away. You sit on a nearby stoop and try to make sense of things. A man hands you a pamphlet titled Manifesto for the Revolutionary Sock. You skim it. It includes the following demands: all citizens to receive 2 socks annually, punishment for hoarders of elastic, a fixed price for darning needles, the nationalization of laundry lines, and, cryptically, let the feet speak. You do not know what the feet would say, probably something about splinters. A debate breaks out near a bread cart. Not over bread. Over whether revolutionary socks should be made of wool or cotton. The wool faction accuses the cotton faction of being aristocratic. The cotton faction accuses the wool faction of being itchy. Someone proposes hemp as a compromise. They are immediately labeled a moderate and chased with a shoe. As the shouting continues, a slow realization sets in. No one is leading this. There are no minutes being taken. There is no coherent policy, but there is, somehow, consensus. People are angry. About food, yes. About monarchy, sure. About inequality, always. But today, they're angry about socks. And that's enough. You try to slip away, but someone sees you. "Where do you think you're going?" a voice hisses. You turn slowly. It's Brigitte. She is now wearing a full suit of repurposed dishcloths and appears to have knitted herself a flag. "I'm just observing," you say. "Observe this," she growls, and thrusts a pair of nearly identical socks into your hands. You accept them like a sacred offering. "They're for the cause," she says. "Wear them. March with us." You look down at the socks. They smell faintly of vinegar and patriotism. You nod. You put them on, and you begin to march again, with the angry sock vendors, towards something greater, or at least warmer. If the revolution has a heartbeat, it is shouting. Not well-planned oratory, not poetic speeches, just shouting. Loud, rhythmic, emotionally inconsistent shouting. Paris is a city of echo chambers, but they are not carved in marble. They are made of meat and breath, and people yelling things they half remember from a poster they saw once during a riot. You now find yourself participating in the favorite pastime of the revolutionary crowd: call and response politics. It starts innocently enough. A man near the front shouts, "Liberty." The crowd roars back, "Liberty." He follows with "Equality." They answer, "Equality." Then he pauses. He's forgotten the third one. Someone in the crowd whispers, "Fraternity." He shouts, "Property." A few people echo it. The rest stare at him. A small debate breaks out about whether property is good, evil, or edible. To resolve it, the group chants, "No more stuff," for a few minutes. No one seems satisfied, but the rhythm is soothing. You are standing in what used to be a market square. You can tell by the number of trampled carrots. Now it's a shouting pit. You observe cautiously. You do not shout immediately. You are trying to calibrate. The man beside you bellows, "To the scaffold with hoarders." The woman next to you counters with, "To the scaffold with landlords." A child adds, "To the scaffold with people who eat cheese too loudly." A cheer rises. That last one really hits home. You join in tentatively. to the scaffold. They nod at you with approval. You are learning. This is how policy is decided. Not in smoke-filled rooms, not with ink and seal, but here, by who can shout the most convincingly while making direct eye contact with someone holding a potato. Every few steps, someone starts a new chant. Bread now. Death to flour taxes. Long live spoons. The crowd picks up what it likes and ignores the rest. It's a system of political natural selection. Weak slogans die off. Strong ones mutate and breed in the wild. You propose one quietly. Shoes for all. No one hears you. You try again. Shoes for all. A nearby group of shoemakers picks it up. Within moments it becomes a movement. Someone carves it into a piece of wood. Someone else adds a subclause, but especially the left shoe. The chant takes on a life of its own. You say nothing more. You are not ready for fame. Call and response is not just political, it is practical. It saves time. Someone shouts, "Who took the flour?" 100 voices respond, "The nobles." Someone yells, "What do we want?" Half the crowd screams, "Bread." The other half screams, "Answers." There is brief confusion. Then someone unites the factions by shouting, "Bread with answers." It becomes a slogan. You chant along. Claude appears again. He is now wearing an entire window curtain as a cape. He climbs a wine barrel, his preferred podium, and shouts, "People of Paris." The crowd, "We're here." Claude, "Are you hungry?" Crowd, "Yes." Claude, "Are you angry?" Crowd, also yes. Claude, "Should we burn something?" Crowd, "Probably." You are impressed by the speed of the escalation. A man with a trumpet plays 3 notes. Someone shouts, "That means bread." A woman corrects him, "No, that means meeting at the square." A third person yells, "It means run." Everyone runs. You run too. You do not know what the trumpet means. But it seemed urgent. As you sprint through the alley, a breathless man beside you pants, "What are we running from?" You shrug. "What are we running to?" You shrug again. He nods. Classic revolution. Eventually the crowd stops. It has reached a crossroads, literally and figuratively. 4 streets, 4 possible directions. A debate erupts. One man declares, "We should head for the palace." Another shouts, "We should head for the bakery." Claude, ever helpful, yells, "We should head toward freedom." Someone asks, "Where is that?" Claude points in 3 directions simultaneously. You suggest a nearby tavern. You are booed. To resolve the dispute, the crowd engages in democratic shouting. Option 1, the palace, gets moderate applause. Option 2, the bakery, gets louder applause. Option 3, freedom, gets the loudest applause, but is immediately disqualified for vagueness. They settle on the bakery. Democracy has spoken. You march on. Every so often, someone forgets the script. You witness a man shouting, "Long live the wait, who are we angry at today?" No one answers. He frowns, then begins yelling, "Down with the baker's dog." It catches on. You chant it 3 times before you realize the baker doesn't even own a dog. At this point, it doesn't matter. The baker might be hiding flour. The dog might be complicit. As you walk, a pamphlet is thrust into your hand. It contains nothing but slogans. Pages of them. Let them eat nothing. Power to the hatted. The people demand slightly better shoes. Spoons before swords. It is unclear who wrote it, or why, or how it was printed. You read it carefully, then use it to fan your face. Revolution is exhausting. Eventually, the chanting quiets. People are hoarse. You are hoarse. Claude has gone quiet. You check on him. He is drinking broth from a boot and staring into the middle distance. He is, for the moment, at peace. You rest your voice. You sit on a step. A woman beside you asks, "What do you believe in?" You think for a moment. Then answer, honestly, not shouting. She nods. Fair. Then someone yells, "To the Hotel de Ville," and the crowd rises, and you rise with it. Because shouting may not be a belief system, but it is a reliable way to stay employed in a revolution. They say you shouldn't judge a book by its cover. In revolutionary Paris, you are judged exclusively by your cover, by the hat you wear, the color of your sash, the angle of your ribbon, the mud content of your breeches, and the general vibe you emit, which ideally should be a blend of righteous anger, mild hunger, and the posture of someone who hasn't slept since the monarchy was functional. In short, appearances are no longer superficial, they're survival. You're learning this now, because someone just accused you of being too symmetrical. It starts with a glance. You're marching alongside the crowd, chanting vaguely about justice, when a woman looks at you sideways and says, "Your scarf's too clean." You blink. She folds her arms. "Who do you work for?" "I'm unemployed." She narrows her eyes. "Too convenient." You respond with a small cough and a deliberate scuff of your shoes on the cobblestones. She watches. She is not impressed. You realize this is not about who you are. It's about who you look like. And right now, you look like someone who possibly owns soap, which, in this political climate, is suspicious. Welcome to the unspoken dress code of 1793. Fashion has become political. It's no longer about taste, it's about alignment. The nobility wore powdered wigs, embroidered waistcoats, and shoes that clicked like smug marionettes. So naturally, if you wear anything that even suggests softness, wealth, or a functioning tailor, you may be seen as part of the problem. The solution? Dress like your life depends on looking unemployed. Because it does. You begin to observe the styles around you. There are trends. The tricolor cockade, a ribbon of red, white and blue, worn on hats, coats, sleeves, dogs, and occasionally loaves of bread. Placement is crucial. Too low, you're apathetic. Too high, you're mocking. Slightly crooked? Ideal. You adjust yours. It falls off. You tie it to your satchel instead. That seems safe. The Phrygian cap. Red, woolen, shaped like something between a liberty symbol and a sock puppet. Revolutionary fashion's most iconic hat. You see it everywhere. On old men, on horses, on Claude, who is now wearing 2-1 for each of his principles. You consider buying one, but the price has tripled due to revolutionary demand. You settle for a torn bonnet with a strong backstory. Mud as a statement. Clean clothes are suspicious. Stains are social proof. Blood is acceptable, provided it's someone else's. You see a woman dip her sleeve in gutter water for credibility. No one questions her again. Layering. Not for warmth, but for versatility. You never know if you'll need to protest, run, disguise yourself as a chimney sweep, or blend into a sack of potatoes. The more layers, the more identities. It's tactical anonymity. You add a second shirt over your current shirt. You are now twice the revolutionary you were moments ago. Across the street, a man is detained for wearing a cravat that is too confident. He insists it's a family heirloom, They insist it's monarchist neck propaganda. He is offered a more humble scarf. He accepts it, reluctantly. They burn his cravat. You take off your belt, just in case. You walk past a street tailor. His sign reads, "Garments for the guillotine, disheveled, angry, affordable." Inside, he sells jackets that are intentionally torn, pants that are one revolution behind in style, and hats with pre-applied soot. His most expensive item is a shirt that says, "This is my only shirt." It's sold out. You overhear two revolutionaries discussing Claude. "I liked his look better when he wore the curtain. Too dramatic. Now that he's added the chamber pot, it feels performative. Still better than Brigitte. She's trying too hard with those oven mitts. She's practically bourgeoisie, baking core at this point." You nod as if you understand. You find a reflective surface, technically, a puddle with aspirations, and examine yourself. Shirt, tattered. Scarf, asymmetrical. Shoes, tragic. Expression, cautiously disgruntled. You're getting there, but something's missing. A woman hands you a turnip and says, "Hold this, it'll help." You hold it. She's right. A group of young radicals walks by. They're dressed in what can only be described as aggressively distressed rags, held together with revolutionary slogans and hope. One has painted "Down with elbows" on his chest. You don't know what it means, but it earns him respectful nods. You make a mental note, next time, bring paint. You watch a trial. The accused wears a coat with buttons that match. The prosecutor gasps. Matching buttons, a sign of structural loyalty. The crowd jeers. He's found guilty of stylistic monarchism. You unbutton your coat, then button it unevenly. Safe. You begin to notice the fashion enforcers, not officials. Just very opinionated revolutionaries with nothing to do and a lot of time to stare. They travel in pairs. They ask things like, "Why is your sock still attached to your foot? That blouse, did you pay for that with coin or with justice? Who hemmed your cuffs, and were they sufficiently angry at the time?" You begin to sweat, which, thankfully, improves your look. As the day wears on, you adapt. You roll your sleeves to just the right angle of disrepair. You smear a bit of jam across your vest. You tell people it's symbolic. You borrow a limp hat from a street musician and trade it for a badge made from fork tines. You have never looked worse. You have never been safer. Claude gives you a thumbs up. "You look appropriately miserable," he says. You thank him. He adds, "I almost didn't recognize you. That's the highest compliment now." You nod, humbly. A child passes by with a sign that reads, "If you look comfortable, you probably deserve prison." You scowl gently, for emphasis. The sun begins to dip. You catch your reflection again. Dirty, layered, unbalanced, vaguely furious. You look revolutionary. You look like everyone else. You look like someone who just might make it to dinner without being accused of liking velvet. For today, that's enough. It begins, as it always does, with a whisper. Not a scream, not a gunshot, not the ringing of a bell. Just a whisper. You hear it as you're trying to eat a boiled beet with dignity, which is impossible. You're sitting on a broken barrel near the Rue des Lombards, chewing slowly, trying to forget that you saw someone use this same beet as a weapon 10 minutes earlier. That's when it starts. A man stumbles past, muttering to no one in particular. The king escaped. He says it casually, like someone commenting on the weather or the price of eels. You blink. The king escaped. No one asks him what he means. No one asks which King Louis has already been beheaded, and no one seems entirely sure what a king even is anymore. But it doesn't matter. The phrase is sticky. You hear it again, 3 feet away. A woman whispers it to her friend as she rips fabric from a discarded curtain to make a new sash. The king escaped. 10 seconds later, someone adds, he disguised himself as a goat. You are 80% sure this is not true. But the remaining 20% of your brain, the part softened by hunger and revolution and too many half-burned pamphlets, considers it. Considers that, yes, maybe the king is out there right now, dressed as a goat, hiding in plain sight, chewing hay and plotting revenge. You shake your head, but it's too late. The whisper is out. Rumors in revolutionary Paris spread faster than disease and hurt more than debt. You've seen it happen before. Last month, a man sneezed near the assembly and someone claimed he was a British spy. He was executed 3 hours later with a handkerchief still in his pocket. Rumor is the revolution's true weapon. The guillotine is merely its punctuation. By the time you stand up and dust off your beat-stained trousers, the whisper has metastasized. The king has returned. He's in disguise. He's hiding in the theater. He's forming a secret army of tailors. He's in this very crowd. You cough nervously. A woman next to you clutches her apron and screams, "I knew it!" You edge away slowly, but it's already begun. A man points to a stranger's boots. "Too polished," he growls. Another shouts, "That hat is clearly royalist." Someone is accused of having regal ankles. You try to look down to earth. You slouch slightly. You furrow your brow. You attempt to eat your beat in a proletarian fashion. It doesn't work. You hear a voice behind you. That man was smiling. You are not sure who they mean. You stop smiling, just in case. Another voice hisses. Too quiet. He's not chanting. You begin chanting. Down with flower deception. It's weak. Someone eyes you. You yell louder. Death too. Unspecific treachery. That does the trick. But the damage is done. The whisper has spread like spilled ink over a letter, blurring everything, smudging names, making truth impossible. You bump into Claude, who is holding a bag of onions like a sacred artifact. He leans in. "It's happening again," he says. You nod. "What is?" Claude looks around, lowers his voice to a conspiratorial growl. "They say someone's working for the Austrians." You blink. "Which someone?" "All of them." You nod solemnly. You do not understand. This is the correct response. A man climbs a barrel. He shouts, "We have been infiltrated. The king's men are among us." You suspect this man used to sell potatoes. But he has volume. The crowd listens. He points at a woman. She gasps, clutching her revolutionary shawl. "You bought imported sugar last week." "I didn't know," she cries. "You didn't not know." The crowd roars. She disappears into it. You don't see her again. The mood turns. It's like a sudden change in the weather. One moment the crowd is warm, if slightly unhinged. The next, it's bristling with suspicion. Eyes narrow, fists clench. The chanting stops. People stop being neighbors and start being potential suspects. You cough again. Someone looks at you. You try to look harmless. It's not easy. You have naturally symmetrical eyebrows. This is dangerous now. You hear another chant, risen not for justice, but for identification. Name them, name them, name them. No one knows who them is. But people begin naming anyway. Claude names a man for tying his shoes too fast. Brigitte names a girl for braiding her hair in a way she once saw on a duchess. Someone names the moon. You look around for an exit. There isn't one. You remember a story from last week. A man was accused of hiding aristocrats in his basement. He didn't have a basement. He was still executed. Then someone found out he'd once said the word velvet without wincing. That was enough. The crowd begins to swell forward. You're not sure who it's following. You're not sure why, but you march anyway. A woman shouts, "Reveal your loyalties." A man yells, "I'm loyal to potatoes." Someone claps. You yell, "Me too." Another man shouts, "You hesitated." You run. You dart down an alley. You press yourself against a wall. You breathe shallow, revolutionary breaths. The alley is quiet. Too quiet. A boy appears at the end, carrying a small drum. He says nothing. He begins drumming, slowly. You nod at him. He nods back. You are not sure if this means you've been spared or marked. You leave the alley. The whisper has moved on. You hope it does not circle back. But in Paris, rumors never die. They just change clothes and wait for the next alley. There is a game everyone in revolutionary Paris plays. It has no board, no pieces, and no rules, only consequences. It's called accusation roulette. You don't choose to play. You are chosen. It begins, as many tragic French games do, with someone asking a seemingly innocent question. In your case, it is this: why are your hands so clean? You look down. Your hands are not clean. They are dirty, in a very working class, revolutionary kind of way, mud-streaked, turnip-stained, and a bit beet pink from your recent meal. But they are not dirty enough. A man with a mustache shaped like an accusation leans in. I heard only aristocrats scrub under their fingernails. You don't know what to say to that. You consider rubbing your hands in the street. But the street is suspicious too. The street, after all, is where traitors walk. You try to walk away. Too late. Someone else joins in. He has good posture. Another. His knees don't crack when he stands. A third voice, helpfully. He owns a satchel. Suddenly, all your normal traits become suspicious. You're now a walking red flag made of manners and vaguely middle-class habits. You feel the weight of dozens of eyes. A woman squints and says, "Didn't he once say the word parquet without flinching?" You try to explain you were just describing your cousin's flaw. "Why does your cousin have a flaw?" Someone screams. The crowd gasps. Accusations, like baguettes, are best when fresh, and this crowd has baked up a hot one. You are now a suspect. You attempt your defense. It consists mostly of loud denials and a single unconvincing chant of "bread for everyone." A man yells, "That's not how the chant goes." Another adds, "He hesitated on liberté yesterday." You shout, "Liberté" 6 times in a row. Now you seem overeager. A makeshift tribunal forms in the street. It's 3 people on a box and a pigeon standing judgmentally on a post nearby. They don't have a gavel. They have a ladle. Someone bangs it on a bucket. "Let the hearing commence," says Brigitte, now wearing a shawl of dramatic tension. You are the defendant. Your charges are vague. Your defense is weaker than your shoes. "State your allegiance," they demand. You reply, "To bread, to liberty, and to moderately priced root vegetables." "Too specific," someone growls. "Too vague," says another. Claude offers a piece of parchment as evidence. It contains your name written on a list titled Suspiciously Clean Individuals. You point out that your name is spelled wrong. Even more suspicious, Claude says. You are losing. Someone demands you recite the slogans of the revolution. You begin. Liberty, equality, fraternity. Then pause. The crowd gasps. You've forgotten one. Or maybe you haven't. Either way, you're in trouble. A man yells, "Add rage." Another says, "Add bread." A third, deranged with certainty, insists, "It ends with and no lace." You repeat all three. It does not help. Someone steps forward and accuses you of being literate. You confirm that you are. They boo. But, you add, only in the revolutionary sense. This earns you polite applause from a subgroup of poorly read radicals. You sense a shift. Maybe you'll survive this. Then someone yells, "He once used a semicolon in a letter." This is met with shrieks of horror. A semicolon, after all, is the punctuation of the privileged. You bow your head in shame. They search your belongings. Your satchel contains one potato, respectfully shriveled, a pamphlet titled How to Yell Correctly, 2 buttons of unclear origin, a very short pencil. They find nothing damning. Then someone says, "He writes with his right hand." You confirm this. Then someone yells, "I saw him use his left hand last week." Gasps all around. Ambidextrous, the worst kind of versatile. You are now an uncategorized threat. The pigeon flaps its wings. The tribunal nods solemnly. You are declared suspicious but not immediately executable. A middle category, reserved for those who are probably guilty of something but not yet fashionable to punish. You are allowed to continue marching with a warning. Don't look too intelligent. You nod. You make your eyes a little more vacant. You resume chanting with slightly less confidence. You are learning. This is accusation roulette. It does not require evidence. It does not wait for reason. It spins every hour, every minute, every street corner. And one day, it will land on you again. Maybe for your handwriting. Maybe for your shoelaces. Maybe for blinking at the wrong quote on a wall. You don't get to know the rules. You only get to hope the crowd forgets you before the next spin. It's quiet now. Not truly quiet. This is Paris during a revolution, so quiet means only mild shouting and distant stomping. But the mood has shifted. You walk through the Rue de la Verrerie with the mob, slower now, like an animal catching the scent of something wrong. It's not the usual kind of wrong mud in the drinking water, suspicious cheese, someone screaming about invisible monarchs. No, this wrong is deeper. It has a rhythm to it. And then you hear it. Clack, clack, clack. Wood on stone. Heavy, deliberate. You turn the corner and see it, the cart, pulled by a sweating horse, flanked by 3 silent men in rough coats. Its wheels are oversized, its frame splintered, its purpose unmistakable. This is not a bakery cart. This is not a delivery wagon. This cart does not bring goods. This cart takes people. It is known simply as the tumbrel. Not an official term, not written anywhere, but everyone knows it, everyone fears it, everyone sees it the same way. As the final ride, you stare at it. You try not to, but you do. There are names nailed to the front. Small wooden plaques, hastily carved, nailed into the frame. Some are spelled poorly, some are scratched out. One is smeared with something dark. Someone whispers, "Those are today's." You don't ask what they mean, you know. Beside you, Claude removes his hat. He holds it over his heart. It's the only time you've seen him stop yelling. A woman behind you sighs, not dramatically, just with the resignation of someone whose breath has finally run out. Another man mutters, "I hope they got the list right this time." You realize that no one knows who makes the list. Not the Committee of Public Safety, not the Neighborhood Revolutionary Cell, not even the men pulling the cart. The names simply appear, written in chalk on walls, whispered in alleys, pinned to trees, and then nailed to the cart. It rolls slowly through the street, not stopping, not announcing, just being seen. That's the point. It doesn't need to take anyone today. Its presence is enough. A mobile threat, a wooden sermon on wheels. The crowd parts instinctively, not out of respect, out of fear that someone will interpret their closeness to the cart as familiarity. You step back, then worry that stepping back too quickly looks suspicious. You shuffle sideways instead. Everyone else does the same. The entire crowd performs a synchronized dance of cowardice. You lock eyes with one of the men pulling it. He looks tired, not evil, not triumphant, just exhausted, like a man who applied for a government job and accidentally became a harbinger of doom. His shirt is torn, his expression is unreadable, his hands are calloused. He could be your neighbor. He probably is. A girl next to you leans forward. "Is your name on it?" You blink. "No," you say. She nods. "Not yet." Then she eats a piece of bread crust, so old it might be archaeological. As the cart passes, someone yells, "Wait!" A man rushes forward, holding a scrap of paper. The guards freeze. He hands them the note. They read it. One nods. He steps forward, and without ceremony rips a name off the cart and nails up a new one. No explanation. No discussion. The cart moves on. You do not recognize the new name. You pretend you do. You murmur, "Ah, yes, him." Everyone else nods. No one admits ignorance. You feel your name, phantom-like, on the edge of that cart, hovering, not nailed yet, but nearby. Someone could say it. Someone could write it. Someone could mistake you for someone else with a similar nose. And that would be enough. Brigitte whispers, "They took my cousin last week." You say, "I'm sorry." She shrugs. "He once complimented a priest's handwriting. That was the end of him." You nod. You don't compliment anyone anymore. The cart disappears around the corner. The silence it leaves behind is louder than most riots. You exhale. Not relief, just the breath you didn't realize you'd been holding. Claude puts his hat back on, then mutters, "We're overdue for a scapegoat." You don't ask what he means. You already know. A few blocks later, someone throws a rock through a window. A cheer erupts. The mob moves again. Not because it's finished fearing the cart, but because it has remembered how to forget. The list will return. Tomorrow, or the next day. New names. Maybe familiar ones. Maybe yours. You try not to think about it. You chant louder. You stomp harder. You repeat slogans with extra syllables. Because this is the only defense left. Noise. Louder than doubt. Louder than guilt. Louder than the sound of wooden wheels on stone. The cart has rolled away, but its ghost remains. The crowd is restless, again not energized, not furious, just activated, like a beehive nudged by a stick, purpose without precision. You feel it in the air, the moment after a storm where the world holds its breath and then starts deciding who to blame for the rain. Someone coughs, and half the crowd glares. Someone else whispers the word amnesty, and a fishmonger shrieks. You tighten the strap on your satchel. It contains a damp turnip, 2 political slogans written on leaves, and 1 stolen scarf. None of it will help you now. You hear it before you see it. A low chancellor, rhythmic, and entirely free of nuance. To the square. To the square. Let the traitors answer there. You look at Claude. He nods solemnly. This is the part where we march, he says, as if reading from a very loud religious text. You nod back, because that is what one does when faced with prophetic lunacy. And so, you begin marching. Again, this is not the pleasant kind of march. There is no music, no banner you want to be seen holding, no clear goal, just feet on cobblestone. Dozens, hundreds, scuffing, stomping, limping, surging. The kind of march that wears down boots and resolve at the same time. People begin shouting again. Justice for the people. Death to the hoarders. Hang the milkman. You sincerely hope that last one is metaphorical. You suspect it is not. You feel someone bump into you from behind. You turn. It's a boy, maybe 12, wearing a paper hat that reads, "Loyal to loaves." He salutes you with a stick. You nod respectfully. He asks, "Are we marching to justice or just marching?" You shrug. He seems satisfied with that answer. You begin to feel the city narrow. The streets become tighter, the houses closer, the crowd more compressed. Everyone is walking shoulder to shoulder, breath to breath, complaint to complaint. At one point, you step on someone's toe. You apologize, loudly, repeatedly, publicly. Because apologies are suspicious now, and you must overcorrect. The man accepts. You shake hands. Someone nearby accuses you of transactional monarchism. You both start chanting to clear the air. To the square. To the square. Bread and blood and public glare. It doesn't really scan, but it rhymes enough to survive. The march turns down a wide boulevard. You realize where you're going now. The Place de la Révolution, where all marches end, where the guillotine lives. You've never seen it up close, only heard it. Once, from a distance, while standing in line for onions. It had sounded like thunder in reverse. You pass a woman selling carrots. She offers you one. You hesitate. You reach for a sou. She waves you off. Payment, she says. That's a pre-revolution idea. You thank her. You bite into the carrot. It tastes like dirt and disappointment. Perfect. The chanting begins to shift. It's more intense now. Names, names, give us names. You do not want names. You would prefer bread. But the crowd has made up its mind. The demand is not for food or fairness, but for fuel new names to place on the ever-turning wheel of revolutionary justice. Someone screams, "Who here isn't with us?" No one replies. That silence is enough. You pass a man reading from a list. His voice is high, shrill, and full of purpose. He reads names quickly, one every few seconds. A woman near you flinches, then smiles when he moves on. You feel your own name rise in your throat, just in case it's read aloud incorrectly and you need to defend your identity on short notice. It's not called. Not yet. You release the breath you weren't aware you were holding. Claude turns to you. You ever been to the square? No. He nods. You'll like it. Very symmetrical. Good drainage. You nod like you care. He leans closer. I once saw 3 bakers guillotined for using pre-revolutionary measurements. You raise your eyebrows. He nods again. Centimeters are safe, inches are suspect. You silently vow to never speak of measurements again. The spire of the old church comes into view. Now stripped of its religious markings and renamed the Temple of Reason, it stands like a disapproving grandmother over the square. The bells no longer ring, but the crowd does. It rings in its own way with footsteps, slogans, and judgment. You follow. Because to stop marching is to make yourself visible. A woman with a tambourine sings a rhyme. 1 for bread, 1 for jail, 1 for traitors. On the rail. The crowd loves it. You hum along, off-key. Someone applauds your enthusiasm. You feel a little safer. For now, the square opens before you. The guillotine is not visible yet, but you can feel it, like a shadow cast by a future event. Someone begins passing out small tricolor badges. You take one. You pin it to your scarf, then remove the scarf and tie it around your head. Someone says, "Smart." You nod like you planned it. This is the march. It isn't fast. It isn't glorious. It's just endless. Because marching means you are part of the movement. And being part of the movement means you're not a target. Until someone decides you are. You enter the square slowly. Not because you're hesitant, but because everyone else is. The Place de la Révolution greets you not with music or fanfare, but with mud, noise, and the cold geometry of justice. At the center of it stands the guillotine. Tall, wooden, practical. It does not gleam, it does not glow. It simply exists with the quiet confidence of a tool that knows it will be used today. You've seen drawings, heard songs, watched silhouettes from a safe distance. But this is your first up-close viewing. It's taller than you thought. Also slightly crooked. Someone near you mutters, "Someone should level it." Someone else says, "It leans because of all the rain." A third person whispers, "No, it leans from the weight of guilt." Everyone nods. No one knows what that means. You step through mud that has been stepped through by thousands. Revolutionaries, spectators, accused, curious children, vendors selling roasted chestnuts. It is a well-trodden place, not sacred, not profane, just used. The cobblestones are slick with a sheen that isn't quite water. You try not to think about it. The crowd moves like a tide, sometimes forward, sometimes sideways, never fully still. Someone nudges you. A vendor. He's selling pickled eggs and tiny commemorative guillotines made of bread. You buy one out of politeness. It sags slightly. You bite the blade first. It tastes of yeast and inevitability. There are benches, not for sitting, for standing. High ground for the best view. A woman in a tricorn hat adjusts her spectacles and says, "Execution's in 20 minutes. You're just in time." You thank her. She offers you a raisin. You accept it. You do not know why. To your left, a group is arguing about philosophy. One says Robespierre is the soul of the Republic. Another says he's a narcissist with neat handwriting. A third says, "We're literally here to watch heads come off. Can we focus?" They nod, reluctantly. The bell tolls once. It's not a signal. It's just a bell. But it's enough. The murmuring dims. The crowd tilts towards silence. You hear the wind, and then the boots. A line of guards appears, Nothing glamorous. Brown coats, wooden batons, boots that do not match. They walk with the weariness of men who've seen too many crowds and not enough days off. Behind them, a cart. Not the same one from earlier, but similar. Wheels squeaking, axles groaning. Inside, 3 people. One young, one old, one calm. You squint. You recognize none of them. You pretend you do. A woman behind you says, "The old one hoarded grain." You nod. Another says, "The young one sang a royalist lullaby." You nod again. Someone else says, "The third one once wore velvet." A collective gasp. You gasp too, slightly louder than average, just to be safe. The cart stops. The accused step out. They do not speak. That is the custom. Anything they say now will be interpreted as guilt, arrogance, or bad taste. The executioner arrives. He does not look theatrical. He looks like someone who used to be a butcher and took a promotion. His face is covered. Not for mystery. For hygiene. He tightens the rope, adjusts the lever, checks the blade. Routine maintenance, performed in silence. The first name is read. No title. No flourish. Just a name. The crowd responds with a muted mix of figures and about time. The condemned walks forward. They do not trip. They do not weep. They kneel, as instructed. Their neck is placed, precisely. The blade rises. You hear a bird. Then the thunk. Then applause. Yes, applause. Polite, measured, like after a middling theatrical performance. A few people nod in approval. One man removes his hat. A woman fans herself dramatically. You bite your raisin. Second name, shorter person, trembling. The crowd senses it. They lean in. Someone yells, "Coward!" Another shouts, "Take it like a citizen!" A third screams, "At least die with conviction." You quietly hope no one ever screams that at you. The person is guided gently. Thunk. Applause again, less enthusiastic. Someone says, "Felt rushed." Someone else says, "Technique was good though." The executioner nods, almost imperceptibly. Third name, the calm one. They smile. That's new. The crowd freezes. Smiling is rare. Smiling is dangerous. Smiling suggests irony. Claude mutters, "Watch this one." The person mounts the platform, no hesitation. They say nothing, just glance skyward. Thunk. The blade hesitates for half a second. Still effective, but not elegant. The applause is awkward. Someone coughs. Someone else drops a small guillotine cookie. The crowd begins to stir again. Vendors reopen their carts. Someone restarts a chant about flour. Children resume hopping between puddles. Life continues. You remain standing for a moment longer, staring at the empty platform, trying not to think, trying not to imagine your own name mispronounced, read aloud to this same crowd, trying not to imagine how you would walk nobly, softly, collapse halfway. You hope, if the day comes, to at least wear a good scarf. Claude claps you on the shoulder. "Not bad today," he says. You nod. He adds, "They're saying tomorrow might be double." You nod again. He wanders off, chewing something that looks suspiciously like a ceremonial bread blade. You sit on a bench that smells of vinegar and anticipation. You stay there for a while. long enough for the blood to be washed away, long enough for the next names to start circulating, long enough for the next cart to be readied. You are now seated on the edge of a shallow step in the Place de la Révolution. To your left, a puddle. To your right, a man selling slightly melted cheese from a wooden tray. In front of you, a wooden platform that delivers closure, spectacle, and occasional structural creaks. The guillotine. It's become background noise at this point. A quiet fixture in an increasingly noisy republic. You didn't plan to sit here. It just sort of happened. No one tells you when to leave. No one tells you to stay. So you sit. The cheese vendor approaches. He speaks with the urgency of a man who knows his product is actively degrading. Would you care for a patriot's portion? You ask what that means. He says it's half a slice, offered without guilt, on revolutionary rye. You agree. He hands it to you on a piece of linen with the words, "Death to royal fat," printed in bold, cheerful type. You bite. It's soft, slightly sour, and perfectly adequate. You watch the platform while chewing. This is the Republic now. More people arrive. Some bring food, some bring dogs, a few bring sketchbooks. They are here for the executions, yes, but also for the routine of it all. The afternoon crowd is not like the morning mob. These are seasoned spectators. They know where to stand, where to lean, which phrases to murmur during the final moments. A woman sits beside you, slicing pears with a knife that is too clean for comfort. She says nothing. She offers you a slice. You accept. On the platform, a new name is read. You hear someone sigh. Another mutters, "I thought he got off last week." The condemned climbs the steps with the stiffness of someone who knows how this ends and has accepted the choreography. They say nothing. The executioner does not look up. The blade falls. You chew slowly. The cheese softens in your mouth. The crowd applauds politely. A man in front of you takes notes. He's wearing glasses that make him look deeply thoughtful, even when he's just doodling in the margins. You glance at the page. He's drawn a stick figure waving from the scaffold. You look away. He scribbles faster. Someone begins selling cider from a bucket. It's warm, foamy, and questionably legal. You buy a cup. Because why not? It tastes like rebellion and fermentation. You sip as the next name is announced. This one gets a louder reaction. Someone stands and yells, "Finally!" The condemned is led forward. She walks with poise. Maybe too much. She bows slightly to the crowd. They murmur with suspicion. The executioner adjusts the rope. Thunk. No one claps. You sip more cider. A boy walks by with a sack of small loaves. He's selling them for solidarity pricing, which means you pay what you can, or he screams "elitist" at you until you feel bad. You pay him in cheese crumbs and a mildly damp coin. He seems pleased. You receive a loaf that might once have been bread. You set it beside you like a pet. The woman beside you speaks. First time, you nod. She offers you more pear. You accept. She adds, "It gets easier," you say, watching people die. She says, "No," sitting through the speeches. You laugh quietly. She does not. Another execution. This one fumbles. The rope jams. The crowd tenses. There's a pause. Then the assistant steps in, makes a quick fix, and the blade drops. Someone in the back cheers sarcastically. A man near the front mutters, "Maintenance, always with the maintenance." You finish your cheese. You wish you had more. The cider man passes again. You nod. He nods. No words are exchanged. This is community. You overhear a conversation behind you. She was accused of blinking too calmly. Well, that's suspicious. I blink calmly. Yes, but not aristocratically. You lean slightly away from them. A dog begins barking during the next execution. It will not stop. The blade falls to a soundtrack of yapping. Someone in the crowd mutters, "Even the dogs demand justice." Another replies, "Or cheese." You check your wrapper. One smear left. You lick it delicately. You don't want to look wasteful. Claude sits beside you. He has acquired a string of onions and a small painted drum. You ask him if he's changed careers. He says no, he's just expanding his revolutionary toolkit. You nod like that makes sense. You've learned not to challenge Claude's logic. It's circular and heavily seasoned. A breeze passes. It smells of damp fabric, wood smoke, and faint iron. You breathe in slowly. Exhale. The woman with the pear stands. She brushes crumbs from her lap. "It's been a good set today," she says. You nod. She walks off, quiet as a forgotten footnote. The sun shifts. The shadow of the guillotine grows longer. A child traces it with a stick. Someone else sketches it onto a bit of parchment labeled La Justice Populaire. A man near the corner tries to sell revolutionary bookmarks. No one buys one. Not yet. Another name is read. Another body kneels. Another blade falls. You glance down at your empty hands. No cheese. No cider. Just the linen napkin and the memory of taste. You fold the napkin and place it in your pocket. It might be useful later, or symbolic, or soft enough to cry into. The guillotine creaks. The crowd murmurs. You yawn, not out of boredom, out of routine. You are full. You are informed. You are momentarily safe. You are part of the audience. And as long as you are part of the audience, you are not part of the show.